Hey guys, MutantCowboy here. In today's video, I just want to kind of dive into some of the things that weren't quite discussed completely on State of the Game yesterday. Go over some of the things that Fredrik's been saying on Twitter, and basically, I want to dive into some of the stuff that I've seen by looking at the gear that might not actually come across from what the developers are saying. So I think those are all very important issues. But before I dive into that, please consider hitting that like button, dropping a sub, and maybe even leaving a comment down below. It'll really help me out. And obviously, the more of you that support me, the easier it is to kind of get the developers' attention. Diving into the first part of the video, obviously we saw a lot of the gear changes, the stat changes, all that stuff that they were actually showing off. Obviously, some of it was highly selected as to not give out as much information as we'd probably want, but it still gave out some information if you were actually looking at it. One of my biggest questions though was, are we still going to see some of those stats that we actually, can dive into a little bit more? Like the crit reduction stat that they took away. The, maybe they add a headshot reduction stat, or even, some sort of like hazard resistance penetration type thing. But, Fredrik told me that basically they are looking at removing all of those very specific stats. So anything that's PvP specific, anything that's PvE specific is going to be removed, like we see with damage to elites, how they're removing that because they don't want that kind of investment. Basically what they want to tell us is that they don't want specialized builds. They don't want us to highly specialize into a specific area because they think it's not fun for us or something. I don't quite understand their reasoning. I'm actually very against this because I like more. More is better, and less is not very fun in an RPG. Now, they have very different mentality on that, and I think they're ruining their game a little bit. And I'm going to go into this in even more detail. So if you don't quite believe me, I think we all drank a lot of this Kool-Aid yesterday. And unfortunately, after diving into it, I'm very, very discouraged by actually learning some of this stuff and looking at some of this stuff. And I know it's actually too early to really dive into all of the aspects of it, but I gotta say, if this is a sign of things to come, guys, I'm really worried about these changes. It's going to look terrible, and it is going to be terrible and boring. So diving into the second part, obviously they showed three pieces of gear that are kind of set up in their ideal form as far as this new build goes, right? You've got the Gila is the defensive monster. You've got Sokolov is the offensive monster, and they were changing Murakami to be the skill build of choice. That's the kind of stuff that they're looking to do. But all of this stuff comes with kind of heavy-handed costs. They're going to be changing a lot of it to basically force you to do stuff. If you look at what Fredrik said here, he was answering a question about how these roles are going to be changed. So like if you had weapon damage and armor on a build, what's going to happen? Basically what he ended up saying was that it doesn't matter what your roles are. It matters what the color is. So basically if you have weapon damage and armor on your build, those are going to be converted to a blue attribute and a red attribute. And basically the brand set is going to determine what your new core stat is going to be. So if you have a Gilligard chest piece, your core stat is going to become armor. If you have a Sokolov chest piece, your core stat is going to become weapon damage. So basically you'll be able to roll that apparently with the recalibration, but all of those brand sets, depending on what they're designed for, will only drop as a blue roll, will only drop as a red roll, or only drop as a yellow roll. You will not find any red Murakami or core stat. You will not find any weapon damage Murakamis apparently as a drop. At least that's what he's saying here. That's a little bit annoying, but that's what they're doing. Other things that they're diving into with this stuff was, obviously you can see that this is Gila, Sokolov, and Murakami. Now, we all know what that means in the current game, right? I mean, generally Murakami is kind of like the lesser version of Gilligard, and Sokolov is kind of the bastard child of the SMG world. Gila is probably one of the top brands in the game. And you can see here, core attribute, 2 attributes, a talent, and a gear mod on all of these pieces. They're basically the exact same, except for just the different colors on their rolls. Now, I asked Fredrik about this. I asked him, are there going to be any differences like we, have with the brand sets currently? And basically he just, kind of said no, without the budget system, which I don't believe. But he says without the budget system that they can't allow for those differences. If you actually look at those mod systems, right, they're basically the same thing as an attribute. So why can't you have different pieces with, maybe 2 mods instead of 2 attributes? Why can't you have something with, no attributes and just 3 mods? Why can't you have certain pieces, maybe even without a core attribute, and just having 4 regular attributes? Why can't you adjust some of these things to actually make it play differently? Now, I understand that they're trying to get away from having, one-sided or winner-take-all type, builds, right? They don't want you to have every single aspect on your build. But at the same time, without the differences, that just seems boring. That just seems really, really boring. Now, I understand that some of it may be for the betterment of the game, but when you start compiling these issues about, well, they're limiting this aspect, so you can't get this thing on there, or they're taking away this stuff. All they're actually doing is they're really just kind of taking away options slowly but surely off. They're just removing them from the table over and over and over again. And they've done this. And when you look back at the old gear, or I guess I should say the current gear that we have now, there was a design intention there that actually, made it a little bit interesting. Now, it didn't exactly work the way that it should have. As I pointed out before on other videos, talents and mod slots outshined having an extra attribute on something like a Badger backpack. It was just fact, because the game relied on talents, and utility mods or mod slots in general were good. Especially when you compare it to how the budget system, gave you a tiny bit extra as an extra, attribute. The way that the points were allocated did not work well, which is one of the biggest problems with the budget system. Now, if they would have fixed that instead of just revamping everything, I think it would have been a big improvement, because obviously we can see here that somewhere in this Badger Tough backpack, they need to increase, at least, 20-30% something, because that's what you're getting from those talents and that mod slot. They need to have a significant increase. But they didn't. They just decided to revamp everything entirely because I don't know. I don't know. I understand I want it, but I don't like the changes that they're making. Now, when you dive into something like the original Division gear, right? There was a lot of options available, and there was a lot of good intention there. And obviously, Classifieds kind of muddied the water a little bit because they were just so much stronger than just regular gear that you basically just had to use them. There was a lot of options and a lot of differences with everything that you did. But at the same time, everything was dependent on basically being different. Everything was dependent on giving you the same amount of options regardless of what you actually chose. So you could choose all these different ways to be different over just having nothing, right? Over just having, the same bland stats. And basically, when you actually totaled it all up, you ended up getting 8 main roles, 9 major roles, 6 minor roles, 9 mod slots, and then you could have 5 to 6 talents or set bonuses. And that gave you a total of 37 to 38 options you could actually have on any of your builds. That's just a huge amount of variety and a huge amount of basically, diving into an RPG system. Now, when we start looking at the new system compared to the current system, what you can see is that the mask is actually gaining a little bit just because it's getting an extra attribute compared to the old one. But when you start looking at the backpack, you can see obviously we're dropping a talent. So it means we're basically now even in the amount of options. But then the chest, obviously, again, we're losing a talent there. So we're now basically getting more options from the original system. Same thing with the gloves. More options in the original system or in the current system. So that's, 2 on their side. With the holster, we don't really see too much because obviously it's pretty much the exact same. But when we jump to the knee pads, again, we're losing another talent, which means we're losing now a total of 3 options to this new upcoming system. We're looking at going to 23 total options on our gear compared to having 26 in the current system. And then now when you compare it to the original, 37 to 38 options, that's just ridiculous. What are we going to get next? Seriously? I don't understand their need to drive as much variety and selection and, RPG just depth to the game away. I don't understand why they're driving this so far away. I don't really know of people who are like, oh, well, stats are stupid. I mean, people like stats. People like getting options. And actually knowing about how to use these stats, knowing about what they do, is part of this skill gap that players have. And of course, this actually has a lot of implications for the actual gameplay itself, right? I mean, when you have no options, when you have no diversity in your build types, you can't really develop things around having the options to counter explosive damage. You can't develop things around the counter for hazard damage. You can't really counter things, that are developed in this game because there are no options, right? Everything has to be very boring and very basic. So we're never going to see advanced mechanics in gameplay. We're just going to see the same redundant stuff over and over again because there's no stats to support advanced types of gameplay. And that annoys me. And my worries just grow when we look at PvP. I mean, currently, there's still things that people learn about the game. Just on my channel alone, I mean, I've dived into incoming, outgoing healing a couple times. And, there's plenty of stuff that people just don't understand about the game, whether that's by intention from the developers or just complete accident because they, put the code in a little bit wrong. We don't know. But there's stuff to find out and test, and that's fun for a lot of people. When everything just, just works, I guess you could say, when there's no real detail and there's no depth behind this stuff, it's very boring. I mean, there's nothing to explore. There's nothing to figure out. All right, guys, that'll do it for this video. I've actually got another thing planned coming up that is based around how we all kind of fell into this trap, how we all kind of started to believe what they were selling us. We all kind of started drinking the Kool-Aid because they were just telling us to. If some of these stats and some of these talents and some of these abilities basically just stay the exact same, stay, built around what they're actually, trying to push us as now God rolls are back, just saying that all this stuff is basically, they've trolled us. They have trolled us with the changes that are coming. And I'll explain that in the next video. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.